Okay, so 618, this is our completed graph with the carbon copy. And now for 620, they want us to go through on how to find that equation, the inverse of that equation. Okay, so I've written it down here, but if we go through that process, the first step is for us to switch the x and y in the equation, and then we're going to undo it. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of both sides, in this equation I have to include plus or minus the square root of x. And now I'm left with y divided by 2. So if I multiply both sides by 2, down here I'm going to put that 2, attach it to that root x, and then I get plus or minus 2 root x. So if you wanted to write this with the inverse notation, it would look just like that. So the inverse of f of x is equal to plus or minus 2 root x. Now for 621, it says, is the inverse a function? So I'm going back to the graph now. I want to kind of concentrate on this a little bit. And if you look, okay, we've talked about the vertical line test and how the vertical line test can determine whether or not something is a function. So a sloping parabola does not pass the vertical line test, because you can see right here, if I draw this vertical line, it's hitting 2 points here and here, which is going to make it not a function. So for part B, it says use color to trace over the portion of your graph of y equals x over 2 squared for which x is greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to trace that here. This is when x is greater than or equal to 0. It says then use another color to trace the inverse of only this part. So the part that I just traced, I only want to trace over the part of the inverse that would be the inverse of this yellow piece. So that would just be this top half up here. And then it says, is the inverse of this part a function? And yes, in fact, it is, because it will pass the vertical line test. So if we are ignoring this bottom piece here, you'd see that it is in fact going to be a function, because that would just be 2 root x. And then for part C, it says find a rule for the inverse of the restricted graph of y equals x over 2 squared, and how is this rule different from the one you found in 6-20. So this portion right here is only represented by two root x. Okay, and that part, either this top part or this bottom part, would in fact be a function if I were to restrict that.